Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with another Total War Warhammer video. We've been speaking a lot about the eastern nations of the Warhammer Fantasy world recently and whether or not it may be possible to see them as possible DLC in Warhammer 3. We've looked at many of the human factions and now there is one more to discuss. These are the Kingdoms of Ind, so without further ado, let's begin. So the Kingdoms of Ind are one of those human nations in the eastern parts of the Warhammer Fantasy world that really did not get fleshed out too much. However, when comparing it to the current state of Cathay without knowing any changes coming to Warhammer 3, and obviously all the other human nations to the east, it's easy enough to say that the Kingdoms of Ind might have the most lore out of all of them, having been mentioned throughout a large number of editions of Warhammer Fantasy, especially through a decent number of books, and also a number of editions for Warhammer Fantasy roleplay. There was a common assumption by the player base that should Games Workshop have started to flesh out the tabletop aspect of the Eastern nations more, then Ind might have been the first race that we would have seen being implemented. It was always known that Games Workshop had the Eastern nations as a to-be-done file, but that never came to pass due to the fact of, well, the world blew up. But let's talk about that another day. But with all that being said, what exactly are the Kingdoms of Ind? Geographically in the Warhammer Fantasy world, they are in the eastern reaches, as you can expect, right next to Grand Cathay and the hinterlands of Koresh. As we are full aware that Warhammer Fantasy is very much a distorted parody of our own world, the Kingdoms of Ind are actually influenced by our own real-life India. A lot of Warhammer Fantasy, as you are aware, is inspired by history throughout the ages. This is a common reoccurring theme, as most of the developers at the time actually wanted to work on historical games rather than fantasy. Not a lot is known about Ind, but we do know a certain few things. For example, these are people who worship a multitude of gods, not so much in the sense like the Empire, which has a rather large pantheon, but the pantheon of Ind is much larger. This is likely to hearken to the idea that with certain cultures you can find divinity wherever you may look. And for that, some people know it as the land of 1,000 gods. There are many rulers within the Kingdoms of Ind, though very little of them have actually been established. Many palaces can be found throughout the nation, and it's often been referred to as incredibly ostentatious. It's never been outright confirmed, but it was speculated that the Kingdoms of Ind have that name because it's not one united nation, but rather a multitude of different nations within the country, which could work rather well should Ind ever get implemented, as that then leads to a number of different factions. We don't know too much about the people, but various editions of the RPG series has always pointed them out to being very proficient traders. And it is likely that they've opened up trade with many of the other races and factions that would be willing to do so. Now, of course, this is very much on a thin line here. We know the RPG books are canon, but to only a certain degree. Of course, we are aware of many Dark Elf raiding parties that have gone there. In fact, Lokia Felheart's famous blades were acquired through Ind, and we are aware of High Elves who had many colonies over there. Some colonies still stand by very loose cannons, so it can be assumed that they actively do trade with the people of Ind. It's a common purpose, why not? We also know that through the RPG series there are a bunch of people from Ind in Marienburg, but then again everyone kinda goes to Marienburg at one point of the timeline. So because of that, the existence of them as a nation would not be alien to the common folk. It's likely that tales from Ind would have spread around the old world without too little much of a problem, as of course this is the whole thing with cultures becoming fascinating to others. The reason why I'm saying this is because that solidifies Ind as a nation in the lore and it makes them much more recognizable. From the lore we also know that they have basic armaments and weaponry solidified into the people of Ind, so there's already a decent amount of former work to work upon. Now when it comes to what makes them unique, what sets them apart from all the other human nations? Well, even from what we've discussed, a pantheon of different gods, a different culture altogether, as right now most of the cultures are focused around European, Eastern, or Western. That brings in many visual changes too, and it could work out rather well. But with all that being said, would it be possible to see the Kingdoms of Ind as a future DLC? Geographically, it's very likely we're going to see them, due to the fact that Ind is obviously between Kislev, the lands of the Chaos Dwarves, Cathay, and the hinterlands of Koresh. It's pretty much smack in the middle between everything. I've said it before in other videos, but it's likely that Cathay is the testing ground to see if there is interest, or well, better yet said, genuine interest, for any of the Eastern nations. Now, I'm not sure how this is with regards to the Total War player base, but in regards to Warhammer Fantasy, we wanted more. We wanted more nations, we wanted more factions, because that would bring in some, well, faction diversity. Many of the factions that were playable in 8th edition, well, they always had the same lists. So everyone kinda had the same armies by the time competitive play came into effect. More playable factions would have at least changed some stuff up. You couldn't have a list ready for everyone else. I'm assuming that in Total War, it also comes into a similar sense. You want more stuff to play with because, well, you don't want to do another Empire campaign over and over. In a personal opinion, as much as I do like the basic Lord packs, I do prefer race packs more because it just brings a lot more to the table. There's also the thing regarding Ind and the intelligent tiger beastmen. While not too much is known about them too, this is a common reoccurring thing with any Eastern nation, we do know that they actively trade in a sense with the people of Ind. It's more in a I'll give you food, you get away, but this could be rewritten in a certain sense to make them more of a part of the Ind faction, as, yeah, it just sounds kinda cool, doesn't it? It would be an interesting way to make a new faction altogether, where you would not only have humans, but also half-man, half-animal hybrids, which would act as a representation of their chosen deity, which kinda mirrors that of the Tomb Kings with their constructs. However, this would be living creatures instead of constructed monsters. Of course, I'm full aware that the Beastmen exist, but again, these Tigermen are very intelligent when compared to standard Beastmen, so it's likely that they could be something else. Going back to the geographic sense too, I mean, it's a lot of territory there. It's likely that we will see Ind, and, well, it's just gonna be a lot of dead space, isn't it? I'm very much sure that nobody wants more Empire clones, or Cafe clones, or whatever, as it's important if these areas are large enough that there could be a reason. It obviously falls around how much the fanbase shows their interest on it too, but I think that they are different enough to warrant a potential race pack. The lore for Ind was done rather well. Yes, a lot of stuff was lifted from history, but then again, this is Warhammer. Practically everything was lifted from history or other lore franchises, so I honestly think they do have a proper leg to stand on. It just feels like if Cafe goes well, then other factions and races such as Ind, Nippon, and so on would have a more of a chance. But what do you guys think about the Kingdoms of Ind? Do you think there's a chance for them to become a playable race pack in the future? Or do you think that that landmass is doomed to be an area for just basic reskin factions, or even just the area of basis for Lord packs? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and let's start a bit of a discussion. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below are various links to different social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and Discord. Also in the description section is an affiliate link with Element Games where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Making a purchase using that link and also our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. It's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A big thank you to Gibraltar LUSC, Ryan Bertsche, Andrew Prince, and Okro for subscribing to us at our Fane level. You guys are super cool. And a big thank you to Edward Yule, VS Vasan, Aaron Whitman, and Shaggy for subscribing to us at our King level. Honestly, we can't thank you all enough. And lastly, a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing, and commenting on these videos. Honestly, it's because of you guys that the channel has been growing at such a great pace lately, so we can't thank you all enough. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.